I work in the college dorms, where my role involves various responsibilities, including security, medical assistance, fire response, and providing support for students dealing with psychological issues. It's a challenging job, but also quite fulfilling. These dorms are like a secluded community situated a couple of miles away from the main campus. Located at the top of this student village is a central hub that serves as a base for all the staff members. It also doubles as an event venue and offers facilities such as catering, a gym, and a few meeting spaces that can be booked by any department in the college. Adjacent to the staff area, between the back doors and the staff parking spaces, there are designated spots for disabled parking. One day, as I arrived for my night shift, I was disheartened to find all the staff parking spots occupied, which is an extremely rare occurrence. However, I recalled that the HR department had encountered a major issue earlier that day in the meeting facilities I mentioned, so I deduced the reason behind the full parking lot. While it wasn't technically against the parking policy for those staff members to park there, as they are college staff, it was generally expected for employees who don't work in the building to utilize the visitor parking base instead of the designated staff parking. This presented a predicament for me. With just 10 minutes remaining until the start of my shift, I couldn't use the student car parks, and the visitor parking area would be locked overnight until after my shift ended. If I chose to park there, I would have to unlock the visitor parking lot in the morning, retrieve the key, leave, and one of my colleagues on the day shift would have to lock it back up. My only other option was to park downhill, but that would consume considerable time as I had to walk back uphill to the staff area. Consequently, I would be late for my shift and miss the handover with the previous shift. Now, here's where things become a bit complicated. I want to emphasize that I would never typically park in a disabled bay. It's generally regarded as inconsiderate. I myself have a disability, although not one that entitles me to use disabled parking spaces. However, there are a few factors to consider. Firstly, those parking bays for disabled individuals are rarely ever utilized unless we have a disabled person attending an event. Since the back door can only be accessed with a key card and lacks a doorbell, the disabled parking spaces hold little value for students or members of the public unless they have made prior arrangements to be granted access. Secondly, there were no scheduled events that night, making it highly unlikely for any disabled individuals to spontaneously decide to park at the back of the hub without prior notice. Furthermore, during the late hours of the night, they could easily park alongside the road since the traffic is minimal, comparable to that on Route 50. Without any other viable options, I made the decision to park in one of the disabled bays, specifically the one farthest from the door, adjacent to the staff spaces. Given the nature of my long and unconventional work hours, I had the flexibility to take breaks as needed, as long as it didn't interfere with my duties. In the highly improbable scenario that more than 2 disabled individuals had called in and needed access to the building, which I would find out during the handover, I planned to take a break right after starting my shift, move my car down the hill, and walk back up to free up the disabled parking space. After entering the building and receiving the handover as expected, there were no scheduled visitors. As the supervisor for that shift, our shifts rotate and the most tenured employee becomes the supervisor. I organized my colleagues for the shift, logged in, adjusted the cameras to my preference, checked my emails, and turned on my radio. After a while, I asked Phil to cover the cameras so I could speak to a resident about disciplinary action regarding vandalism. Just as I opened the office door, I had one of those comically timed moments where someone was about to knock on it. Instantly, I recognized her, Karen, the Dean of Facilities. Now, it's important to note that we are part of the Auxiliary Services section, not the Facilities section, so Karen is not my direct supervisor. However, she holds a significantly higher position in the organizational hierarchy, creating an awkward situation where, unless I had a compelling reason not to, I still had to show deference to her. Refusing to comply could potentially result in being reported to HR for insubordination, particularly since the building we were in technically fell under the jurisdiction of the Facilities section. Some additional context about Karen. She is widely despised among lower-level staff throughout the college. She embodies the quintessential power, tripping figure deriving perverse satisfaction from belittling anyone with a lower salary than hers. which is almost everyone. Over the years, she has engaged in numerous acts of malevolence, cementing her reputation as an antagonist within the institution. A startled Karen practically pushed me back into the office. It turned out that she had attended the event hosted by the HR department earlier in the day and had parked her car in the staff spaces at the back of the building. Since she didn't have an office in the building, convention dictated that she should park in visitor spaces, although, again, this was not explicitly outlined in the policy. During her departure, Karen noticed my car parked in the disabled bay. She recognized me instantly, as we had endured several previous interactions that were always unpleasant. Furthermore, she saw my name on the staff sticker displayed on my windshield. Karen, where do you get off thinking you could park in the disabled bay? Me. Well, nobody uses those. Karen. Oh, so you believe you're exempt from the rules just because you enforce them? Me. Look, it's not a big deal. I'll go move my car. Karen. Oh no, you won't be doing that on the college's time. Me. I'll do it during my break then. Karen. No. Breaks are meant for relaxation, not for moving your car. Nee. Well, what do you expect me to do then? Karen, I want you to issue yourself the standard $70 fine. You can see the power glee in her eyes, can't you? Me. Are you serious? Karen, absolutely. You need to learn that you don't make the rules. You just enforce them. At this point, I'm staring at her in utter disbelief. I have a short temper, but I know better than to lose my cool and jeopardize my job. Swallowing my pride, I comply and write myself a ticket. It's worth noting that we essentially work as subcontractors for the city, responsible for parking and traffic enforcement on all college grounds. So, the authority behind these tickets comes from the city, not the college. Knowing that if I approach the student vandal now, I'll unfairly take out my frustrations on them, making an already unpleasant conversation worse, and realizing that sitting and watching the cameras will only fuel my anger, I decide to restock the staff kitchen first. Afterward, I have a conversation with the student, and once that's done, I return to the office. Phil, my colleague who witnessed the entire encounter from the camera feed, is there. Is the witch still around? I ask. She's just leaving now, he responds, pointing at one of the cameras. He then adds, that's strange. She's exiting through the front. Karen often visits our facility to use the gym at the end of the workday since it's free for students and staff. Presumably, that's what she was doing today as well, considering it's been about 45 minutes since she humiliated me. When she does this, she typically takes a taxi home since she lives on the opposite side of the city, and the evening traffic is a nightmare. We all know how much more bearable traffic becomes when you're not the one behind the wheel. The next morning, she takes a taxi back to retrieve her car and drive to the main campus. It's at this moment that I have a brilliant realization. I pull up the parking policy, scrolling through it until I find the desired section, highlighted in bold letters. It explicitly states that staff members are not allowed to leave their cars parked in the staff parking area during non-working hours. There are a few exceptions listed, mainly pertaining to breaks, none of which apply to Karen. As I'm about to write the ticket, a better idea comes to mind. Our cameras are equipped with advanced plate recognition technology. The city upgraded all the cameras monitoring the roadways about 6 years ago, allowing us to not only store 40 days' worth of camera footage but also access the plate log, which has been kept indefinitely. This log records the entry and exit times of vehicles, and since we only have 3 entry-exit roads, it can help determine when a car entered and left the compound. I share my plan with Phil, who readily agrees to help me. He spends the next 4 hours going through the plate log system, meticulously compiling a list of dates when Karen left her car parked here overnight. The astonishing result: Karen has left her car overnight on 585 separate occasions over the past 4 years and several months. Armed with this information, I log into the city's Find Portal software. Yes, that's its actual name. We can only issue tickets for ongoing violations, but for incidents captured through auxiliary systems like cameras, we need to issue fines by mail. I enter Karen's office address and proceed to enter all 585 dates and times, along with copies of the relevant sections of the parking policy and the corresponding city statutes that give the policy legal authority. The result is a glorious document spanning 13 pages, totaling $40,950 in fines. By this point, all my colleagues have gathered in the office, and I call them over, knowing they will relish this almost as much as I do. As I click log and print, an unfamiliar warning pops up. The fine you are about to issue exceeds $10,000. Are you sure you wish to proceed? Everyone is dumbfounded, but soon enough, laughter fills the room. It's a moment of pure joy. I swiftly print the document, place it in a windowed prepaid envelope provided by the city, and drop it in the external mail slot. The city requires us to use external mail or mailing services for fines, presumably for proper documentation. To add the cherry on top, I issue a ticket and place it under Corinne's windshield, since, of course, she has parked her car here that night as well. Naturally, when I return to work after she receives the fine, she's waiting for me in the office. Karen, what the hell? Do you really think this is gonna fly? Nee, with instant expression. What do you mean? Karen, the ticket, the fines. Do you really think this will fly? Nee, rules are rules. Karen, you know as well as I do that this has never been done here before. Nee, well, Karen, I don't make the rules. I just enforce them. Exit, Karen, stage right. Now, there are some further developments, both good and bad. Let's start with the bad. Karen decided to sue, and I had to appear in court on my day off. Fortunately, I was technically representing the city, so it wasn't a personal lawsuit, and I had the support of the city attorney. The court ended up reducing the fine to $10,000, which apparently was the maximum amount allowed for post-facto fines issued at once, hence the warning, but considering Karen had sued to have the fine dismissed entirely, it was still a partial victory. She also attempted to bring the matter to HR, but the Dean of Auxiliary Services, who happened to dislike her as well, defended me to HR, so her efforts went nowhere. Now for the best part. This year, I was appointed to the Auxiliary Services Policy Review Board. Just last week, I successfully pushed for an amendment to the parking policy. The revised policy now states that if staff members visit a building other than where their office is located and there are fewer than 20 staff parking bays available with empty visitor bays present, they must utilize the visitor parking instead. As of June, Karen will no longer be allowed to park in the staff spots at all. Ironically, it appears that I do, in fact, make the rules now. The revised policy serves as a fitting conclusion to this entire ordeal and ensures that fair parking practices are implemented moving forward. I worked as a security officer at a prestigious department store on the West Coast during the late 1970s. However, I soon became dissatisfied with my position due to the incompetence of the security manager. Not only was she ineffective at her job, but she also took credit for my ideas when presenting them to corporate security. As a result, I began searching for a new job. During my college years, I stumbled upon my dream job opportunity, working for a private investigator. Excited about this prospect, I decided to visit the department store where I used to work to catch up with some former colleagues and do some Christmas shopping. While I was there, I took the opportunity to briefly chat with the security manager. To my surprise, she revealed that the electronics section had been plagued by a significant amount of stock disappearing regularly. They had recently implemented changes such as replacing the lock and limiting access to the key. Intrigued, I decided to check out the electronics section out of curiosity. Within a mere 5 minutes, I made a shocking discovery. I promptly returned to the security manager and shared my findings with her. I explained that by placing a temporary camera in a specific location, we could catch the thief or thieves red-handed. It was during those 5 minutes that I noticed a critical security flaw in the stockroom. The recent remodel had added a new wall and door to the front, but the back of the stockroom had merely been covered with loosely secured plywood that was painted to blend in with the wall. The thieves had been capitalizing on this easily recognizable security shortcoming to steal the stock unnoticed. Helping people in this manner gave me a sense of fulfillment without any personal gain.